So once again, we'll be starting with our ogre character that we have been working on for the DVDs 1 and 2. The rig has been finished. I'll just go and hide off the geometry for the character. And this is the base rig, basically the animation rig for all intents and purposes, if you want to think of it that way. We will be adding to this rig for more deformation in this series. We'll be adding some stretchy bones to help correct shoulder deformations and leg deformations, as well as adding an automatic belly bounce and working on some other areas. So the base rig is really where I start and get working so that I can start skinning the character. From there, it's the rig is actually quite a fluid thing. It grows as you start to skin the character, where you start to see problems and where you start working on it. I find that just diving in and trying to add all the stretchy bones right from square one isn't always the best solution, because you don't actually always know exactly where they're going to go. Once you're into the skinning process, you do, and you can work on it. Something in production I always like to make sure is that the person who's going to be rigging it will also be skinning the character, so that it isn't disjointed. I find that if you have one person trying to build the rig, one person trying to skin it, again there's a lack of communication often that happens, and the rig doesn't always end up doing exactly what's needed. And like I say, often you end up having to change or adjust it, add to it. So it's better if the person who actually rigs it, skins it, they know what they've done, they know why they've done it, and they know exactly what the skinning should be, how it should be working, and what steps they may, have planned to leave till the skinning process. The ogre hasn't changed much. I haven't done any extra work on him, but we'll start from here, and we'll start skinning the character and having him deform and work properly with this rig. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to add the skin modifier. Skin modifier needs to be placed below the mesh smooth modifier. This is because mesh smooth is going to increase the amount of vertices in the model drastically to, and in this case that's I believe just a level 1. Our render level will actually look more like, as it waits and thinks, our render level is going to look more like this. We don't want to have to wait all these vertices, so it's far better that we actually put skin below mesh smooth in the stack and allow mesh smooth to increase the amount of vertices after we've skinned it, essentially. I'm going to pick editable mesh and add it above that. Our base model should be an editable mesh, as it's much faster than a poly model, as I've suggested. So as soon as we turn everything off, we know that we're not generating a poly model again to screen, which will slow our viewport down. The skin modifier has multiple rollouts. Just run through them quickly. First one is the parameters rollout. This is where we're going to add and subtract and work with our envelopes and our vertex weighting. Tools like the weight table and baking and painting weights. The next rollout is the mirror parameter. The mirror parameter allows us to be able to mirror envelopes and vertex weights from one side of the character to the other. We're able to do that with this character because it is a symmetrical character. If your character is going to be symmetrical, make sure it is actually symmetrical, that it isn't kind of just close. Make sure that your rig is symmetrical and it is exact. The mirror tool will work really easily and really well at that point. If you're not careful about this, you're going to have to increase thresholds to the point where it starts to guess at how the mirroring should take place, and you're going to find that the mirroring on your left side of your character isn't the same as the mirroring on your or the weighting on your right. Display rollout allows you to be able to work with the different display parameters for all of the features of skin. Advanced parameters, I'll get into more of this later. There's several things in here, but this is some various different tools. Gizmos basically allow us to be able to place things like extra deformers on elbows and joints to help them deform better once they've been skinned. You'll see where a straight skinning of a character doesn't work very well, and you actually have to add a lot more to it to be able to get it to deform properly, especially on a character like we're working with here.
something with big, large arms and large legs and a big stomach on it, it's not going to be easy to skin. It's going to actually take some time and work. Skinning a character properly will take probably just as long as actually generating the rig itself. I know a lot of people think that, oh, I come to skinning the character, it'll take 2 minutes. It doesn't. It's something that takes a lot of time and effort to get it right. It's just as much of a black art as rigging itself is. Something that you get much faster at with time. I want to add bones to the skin modifier now. You can do that in 2 different ways. One, let's enter the sub-object edit envelopes mode. That way we can work with our envelopes. The first way you can do it is simply by saying add, and then you can pick from your list of objects. Now, you've named everything correctly, you should be able to find things properly. However, it's still a real pain in here, I find, because there's a lot of bones you don't want to add. And again, maybe if you've gone through and named them all exactly the way you want, you won't have to worry about that. But the bones you don't want to add are things like the nub bones, the little end bones on all the fingers, the end bones on the twist bone, on the end of the arm bone, the end bone on this twist bone up in the upper arm. So there are a lot of little extra bones that you really don't want to be adding. So just adding all of the bones means you're going to get a lot of extra envelopes that you're going to have to go around and delete. I like using a different method for adding the envelopes. I enter the filters and switch to bones so I don't end up picking other things by mistake. And in the quad menu by default you'll have an add bones option. And that add bones option allows you to be able to pick bones in the viewport. You can see that my mouse comes up with a different icon when I roll over a bone. This means now that when you click on them, it's going to actually add the envelope for that bone. Now in the foot, if you remember, we've actually got a bone that runs along the length of the bottom of the foot. We've got a bone that's set up for the toes here. See if I can pick it. I seem to be having a hard time getting it. Right there. And we have a bone in the upper part of the foot. Now in actuality, we don't need all of them. We only need 2 of them. The first one I chose here, we don't need. So I'm going to say remove. And the one in the bone that goes down and links up to that bone that runs along the ground, we don't need. I'm going to hit remove. We want the foot to bend across this joint here. And it's this bone that lifts when we flex the foot up and down with the spinners that we generated in DVD2. Or sorry, DVD1. For the toes to bend, we need this envelope here because that's going to work all of the toes. Now in this foot rig we didn't generate a bone for every toe. If we had done, we would have to be picking all of those as the envelopes. But the first 2 bones that I picked, this one down here and this one here, are really just there to create the foot roll system. They're not there for skinning. So I'm going to pick those 2. Again, back to add bones. The thigh bone, we don't need either of the nub bones. Or sorry, the calf bone and the thigh bone. And then let's do the same on the other side. Let's go in and pick the toe bone. And this pick tool is a bit finicky for some reason. You gotta get it right over the right spot. So I've got those 2 chosen. Calf bone again, thigh bone picked. Now I'm not going to use these little bones at the top. I do sometimes, it depends, but I can add them later if I need to. What I find, it's better to add the bones you know you need, work with them, see if you can get the skinning as close as you can and working correctly. If not, then we're going to generate more bones, and we will be actually doing that, generating extra bones in this tutorial. I'm going to add the spine bones. And again, I've got an extra nub bone at the top of the spine, and the neck bone, and the head bone. The upper arm bone, the twist bone for it, the lower arm bone, and the 2 twist bones for it. And then the hand bones. You can see this makes pretty short work of it being able to go through it this way. And instead of actually having to guess based on my naming conventions which bones I need to add, I can just click on them. I find often I don't even name a rig until I've completed everything, so sometimes even at this stage I'm already skinning the character and I haven't even gone around to the process of naming all the bones. Might be a bit lazy on my part, but I'll tend to do everything, all the naming last. It actually probably makes it a bit more difficult because I can't see the name of the bone in the bone list. So personally, I would suggest to people that you actually name the rig as you go, and then name the so that when you're doing other operations, you can call on things by name. Oh, I missed the hand bone here. Need that one as well. I think I missed it on the other side as well. Now, envelopes in Max are added and pre-sized for you when you start off. They are sized based on the size of the object that's chosen as a bone. Anything can be used in skin as a bone. You can pick splines, you can pick just regular geometry, you can pick a camera if you wanted to skin your character to. The size of the envelope is generated by the size of the object you picked. So the bigger the object, the bigger the envelope will come up by default. You'll note that in Max you can add the fins to the sides of the bones and whatnot. I tend not to do that for another reason. It's great that they actually create a larger envelope that's more like the size you want, but they also will put them on an angle that you may not want, and I'll show you why. Let's just work with this one for now. Actually, let's pick this. Let me pick one that'll work well. Yeah, okay. We'll work with this twist bone right here. Why not? Right in the middle of the arm. I'm just going to remove that bone. Let's go out of sub-object mode. Let's go into the bone, and I'll show you why I don't like adding the fins. And let's go and add some fins that show the volume, or we could have changed the size of the bone itself. So now we have this, the fins on there. Maybe we've sized them to fit the size of the arm a bit better. Let's go back into the skin, and once again let's add that bone. And you'll now notice that the envelope has come up very large. It's also been placed sideways in the model, because what it does by default is find the longest axis along the X, Y, or Z of the bone, and it puts the envelope in line with that. Now, for myself, I find this very awkward to try and weight this envelope now, because it's on a very awkward angle to the arm. I'd rather that the shape of the envelope run along the length of the arm the way that we had it originally. So if you're going to use the fins, what I find I do is you can size them all up, but then go in and turn them off for the entire model as you add the envelopes, and you'll find that you'll get a little bit better envelopes to start with. So enter shade and highlight mode, and you can see that picking the calf bone here, the entire model is blue. Picking any of the bones, you'll notice that right now the character's staying blue. If you probably go down and choose a bone in the finger somewhere, you'll start to see that you'll get a color change in the vertices. Blue vertices have not been weighted to that envelope. So when I choose this envelope here, anything that's blue has not been weighted to this envelope. So you can see actually that there's very little of the model has actually been weighted at this point to any of the envelopes. This can be seen right away by exiting the skin modifier, choosing the main waist control, and moving it, and you can see that essentially the model is tearing apart. What we need to do at this point is start to adjust the size of the envelope so that we actually encompass all of the vertices in the model. I'll start with down at the foot area here to make it a bit easier. The envelopes have an inner and outer radius. The outer radius essentially is the area of effect, and that is the outer limits of the effect of that envelope. The inner radius is a strength and tells you how strong that envelope will be. I find I prefer working with the outer to start with. Essentially, if you make all the inner envelopes small, or set them right down to 0, you're getting all sort of fall off from the main weight to the outside. Red vertices are 100% affected by that envelope. So right now, all but a few vertices right in here that are a little bit orange, all of these vertices are 100% affected by this envelope. Now in this case right now, we don't want that. These vertices up here should be affected more by this envelope. So we'll select it then on screen, and we'll start adjusting this envelope up and down. You can see that we start getting all these colors now. These colors start to represent weights in between 100% and 0. So in this case now, this envelope has 100% control of these vertices up here that are red, and 0% control over these ones that are dark blue. Light blue start to become affected, and as it ramps up into the oranges and yellows, oranges, and then red, we start getting more and more effect. If we step back to the one at the toe, you can see that now it's no longer red around the rest of the foot. A single vertice can only be weighted 100% to any number of bones in total. If it was weighted to more than 100%, it would move faster than the bone system moves, and essentially the model would walk away from the bones. So when you adjust one envelope, you're actually adjusting the other envelopes that affect those vertices as well. The envelope itself doesn't change. It's the weight of the vertices that change, that are affected by it. Envelopes in skin only have so much control. You can't have a non-pill shaped one, for instance, to start with. You can't make them oval. All you can really do is just size them up and down this way. We can add more of these cross sections, these rings around. I'll show you that in a minute, which can help. But essentially we can only get this close. Envelopes are not the end result for skinning. It is simply a starting point. You can also move envelopes. This bone in the foot would be a lot better if it actually could grab a hold of some of the heel area here. So we'd have to make it larger. Now I'm making it larger, it's going further and further up the leg. Again, probably isn't what we want. What we can actually do is you can actually move the envelopes off of the bones. Right on the end of the envelopes, if you notice, there's these selection box you can pick. And this allows us to be able to move the actual envelope itself. It's still going to follow that bone that's in the foot, but we can offset it from it just to help us get a better starting value for our skin. So now we can actually encompass that heel without having to make the envelope much bigger than we're probably going to want it to be. Working our way up to the calf bone, increase the size of the end down by the ankle. Start taking in some of the ankle area. And then I can start encompassing the knee with the top. And right now I'm affecting a big area around this knee, but I'm not catching the back of the calf. The legs are actually quite wide at this point. And I really don't want to make the top of this envelope larger because it'll start taking in the thigh bone. So what you can do is you can add cross sections. What we need is one is right about here, so we can make the middle of the envelope larger and not have to increase the size of the ends. That's done by cross sections with the add button. You pick add, and then you can click on the cross section anywhere you want, and it'll add a new cross section to it. That'll allow us now to be able to increase the size of that envelope around the calf area without affecting the ends. Now my goal here is to make sure that I encompass all of the vertices, at least, that are needed for each bone in the rig that we've added. In the thigh, same thing. I'm going to go in, I want to grab, increase the knee area. Now I've got a pretty good idea of where I'm going with this because I've done it so many times. You're probably going to have to do a lot of playing around. I really don't know how my model is going to deform at this stage. I'm just guessing. It is literally just a guess at this stage, and we're going to find that out once we've done our first pass on the guess. We'll then be able to go and do some corrections. Once again, this envelope, because of where the hip joint actually goes to, doesn't seem to be very good. We need to encompass a lot of the butt of the character here, his cheek. Probably need to get in more of this side here without actually, right now we're starting to climb right up the side of the character. We don't want to affect it all the way up here, but we still haven't got the bum in. So again, adjusting the position of the envelope a bit and getting it more centered to the mass of the character as opposed to the bone. We can probably make some adjustments to it now and get it to control better areas that we're looking for. This is going to be a bit of a problem up here. Again, something else we can do is you can shorten the whole envelope, same way that you can move it, just make the whole thing a bit shorter. And that'll help get it around the area and not going up too far. I'm not going to worry too much about the fact that it's going red all the way up here, because that'll change as soon as I weight the next bone in the system, which will be into the bottom of the spine. So you can see around the knee area now, it's changed a lot from where it was now that I've adjusted the thigh bone. I may not be getting as much of it as I need, so I can again go back and tweak that up, and you can see it. The orange basically means it's probably about a 50%, and same with this one now, it's about 50% of the knee area. This is probably going to get us a very soft bend in the knee joint. Let's mirror this over right now, because now that we've done these envelopes, we can mirror them to the other side. I'm going to turn on mirror mode. Mirror mode shows you this mirror plane down the center of the character. Now on my character, it is down the center of it, and that's because the pivot of this character is in the center. This is what I mean by working really clean. When I say making sure that things are done in very specific ways, it makes every step easier if you've done previous steps correctly. I made sure that I reset the X-forms in this character. I made sure the pivot was in the center of world space, in the center of the character. And it's just going to make it far easier. The envelopes that show up in green and envelopes that show up in blue are basically showing which ones are being mirrored. So this one's green, this one's blue, it's saying it's finding a mirror. If the envelopes show up as red when you're in mirror mode, it means they're not finding a mirror side. Now that makes sense for the spinal column. There is no mirror for it as they lay right down the center. Now what you really want to do is you want to make sure that they're all finding their counterpart. I'm just going to turn the mirror threshold to here to 0. And you can see when I do that, all of the envelopes turn red. The threshold controls the distance variance basically from left to right side, or right to left side. And the threshold by default is set at 0.5 units. If you're working in a very, very small unit scale, which often seems to be the case for games, you may have to decrease this value a lot, because if it goes too high, it can actually find mirrors for multiple bones on the other side instead of just the one that it's supposed to find. So essentially finding the smallest value that works is the best thing you can do. So I usually have a tendency to go through, here's when I hit 0.2, The thigh makes a match because this bone, its original position of this bone and this bone were in the correct spots, but the others aren't quite matching up yet. Point 3 appears to catch everything pretty good. I like to keep that value as low as possible when I'm working to make sure that it's only doing exactly what I need. Now to mirror envelopes, you've got a couple of different options. Mirror paste will take vertices and mirror them over. What we're looking for is mirroring the bones over and not the vertices at this point. So paste green to blue bones, and that's what the one we're looking for. So we want to paste the green bones over to the blue bones. Paste green to blue. When I check that on, you'll notice that what's happened right away is the left side bones now have moved themselves into the placement of the right side bones. And if I exit mirror mode now, pick the left calf, you'll actually notice it's also added the cross sections and sized the envelopes correctly. This makes short work. I don't have to touch the whole left side of the character. All I'm ever going to do is weight the left side of the right side of this character, and mirror everything over to the left side. In this case right now, I'm just going to stick with doing it with envelopes. So let's start with the spinal column now with the envelopes. Once again, the placement of this envelope probably isn't very good. The simple reason being is that the spinal column runs right up the back of the character, but this character has got a huge belly. So if I try and actually size this envelope to take in the front of the stomach, it's going to be huge. Best thing you can do then is to, again, move it into the center of mass to help get a better idea of how this is going to work. I'll just do this quickly. And you can see it already starting to take in the crotch area, but the center of the envelope isn't doing much. Again, I'm going to add a cross section, and you can also get to the option in the quad menus. Now what I want is a pretty soft fall off in the body area. Let's go up to the next envelope, and again let's move the center of mass forward. Try and get it in the center somewhat. And then size this one up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue doing this throughout the entire model. As not to bore you, I'm going to stop here and go through and size all of the envelopes and mirror them to the other side so that I know that I'm encompassing all of the envelopes and getting a fairly good idea of my overall weights. It's just a guess at this point.